Hi everyone, my name is Tendai Chitapi. I'm excited to be on the Online Prosperity Show, where I'll be talking about my journey from humble beginnings into a world that threw me into innovation, leadership development, and creating safe spaces for men. My journey from shame to self-acceptance, and learning how you can learn to accept yourself, your journey, and become your best version. Tune in for the show. You don't want to miss it. Cheers.
Now, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, your premium destination where we dive into the journeys of remarkable individuals transforming lives and industries. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we're going to be exploring a narrative that intertwines corporate finance, agri-tech innovation, and a profound commitment to men's mental health. Now, Tendai, how are you doing, my brother?
I'm good. Thank you, Prosper. I'm glad to be here with you, and very honored for the invite and looking forward to a good conversation.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. I mean, I've looked at your life story, your journey, and all the accolades you've achieved. I kind of feel starstruck having you in front of me right now there, sir.
No, don't do that, Prosper. I'm not a star by any means. I think I'm just a man. Trying to make my own little mark in the world. But yeah, it's been quite a journey, and just I think as we were talking before, even hearing your own journey. You realize that we have all been on a journey. Sometimes you look at people's stories and you're like, wow, he went through that, she went through that, she did that. But then sometimes when you actually take a moment and look back on your own life, and you say, oh, hang on, I've also got my own story to tell, and so I'm always very keen and curious to learn people's stories, their deeper stories, not just the ones that they just, have learned now and memorized, to go deeper, and I'm always, I think, very happy to also share my story as well. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I'm glad you've mentioned that, because now we've gone beyond the Twitter version that people show up with on the world, right? The 125 characters, and this is it. No,
Yeah.
People go deeper than that. And for those that are joining us right now, we are about to go deep, because our guest today, Tendai Chitapi, is the founder and CEO of Kuronga, an award-winning agri-tech startup that's leveraging AI to revolutionize farming in Africa. But Tendai's story doesn't stop at the technological innovation. It actually extends to his role as a mental health advocate, particularly focusing on creating safe spaces for men to connect and heal. Now, Tendai, your story starts way back. I've been looking you up, and ever since your post that went viral on LinkedIn, which was, like you said, a bit of a surface than what was actually happening behind the scenes. As I looked you up, I heard from the grapevine that you literally started leaping from high-rise buildings as a kid. So this whole jumping to conclusions or jumping into certain activities didn't just start with the adult Tendai, right? It's a very fascinating start. Tell us a little bit about that story of you being that kid that jumped off a second-story balcony.
Wow, thanks, Prosper. You've done your homework. So it's a story I often just share. It's one of the, I think, the signature stories from my childhood. In our family, we've called it now the Superman story. As I was growing up, I think I was a avid fan of the Superman franchise. It was animation only at that point. Hadn't really been exposed to the movies, or maybe one or two of the earlier ones. But So there was a cartoon that used to come on the Superman animated. And so in my mind, in my sort of 3, 4 year old mind, I can't remember exactly how old I was, somewhere there, I just had this idea that, well, if Superman can fly, surely so can I. It was a very logical conclusion in the mind of, a 3, 4 year old, and so yeah, I think there was a day when I was at home. It came on the TV. I was all excited, adrenaline. Episode finished, and was with a cousin of mine and an uncle. I believe they were sort of baby minding me. And after school, and the flat where we lived um, had uh, a connecting balcony, which had a leading entrance from the living room, but also from the main bedroom. Right, they're both rooms laid out onto the small balcony. It was a small sort of cozy unit, and so I left them in the living room, and I sort of snuck out and went through the bedroom, and then snuck out onto the balcony. I was like, no, man, we have to try this. This has to be a thing. Yeah. So I remember I got some paint tins, stacked them up, climbed up, sat on the ledge, you know, had to think for a moment, sort of calculated all the little variables such as they are in the mind of a baby. And yeah, with all the wisdom of a child, I reckon, nope, I think I can do this. If Superman can do it, so can I. Yeah. And so I took the leap of faith, as it were. And suffice it to say, I did not go up as I had imagined I would. And the journey down was quick and fast. Unfortunately, when I landed with a thud, a very disappointed thud, unfortunately, I didn't, break any bones or, suffer any really major injury. But it was, the kind of story I think that when I look back was completely on brand, because I have been that guy that I would say is not afraid to take risks, not afraid to take that leap, in many areas of my life as I've grown up. But yeah, that was it's always an interesting story to look back on and see, oh, okay, a lot of this makes sense because it didn't just start now. It's sort of always who I've been, I guess.
Absolutely. And I'm really happy to hear that, there wasn't the whole splat, over there, because that would have
No.
been another story. But, looking at that, that really then points us to the fact that growing up, there would have been influences around us without us actually having the idea or cognizance to discern whether these influences around us were moving us towards good or bad. And I also remember as a kid, I would put cushions on the ground and jump off the bed because we used to watch wrestling. So you can only imagine I would be going in serious slamming, and I actually had an elbow injury. So I was thinking that is what would have happened to you. But mine wasn't a big jump, but because I was actually elbowing into the ground. So you can imagine. But those were the influences that we grew up around. What was it like for you, growing up, sir?
Yeah, so I was raised primarily by my mom, a single mom. My parents divorced when I was very small. And my dad he was not an absent father. He's late now. He was not an absent father, but I think as much as he could be present, he was present. But he went on to remarry and sort of get another family, another life. But I grew up primarily under the wings of my mom, and she has always been, I think, that rock. She has always made sacrifices and always shown up and always just been there. I think she made every effort that she could to not make me feel any kind of a gap in terms of parental support. And she, I think, made she had the resourcefulness, I guess, to figure out that, I was fairly academically gifted when I was young. And she found means and ways to try and get me into good schools because of her own, means at the time. I would never have been able to go to the schools that I went to. So she got me onto the radar of the Lord Soames Bursary Trust, which is a UK-based bursary trust that essentially enables and allows underprivileged but gifted African children to attend private schools across the continent. And so I was a beneficiary of that program, having, the opportunity to go to Rizawi and then to Peterhouse. Again, schools I would, never have been able to go to just of the means of my folks at the time. So it was really an amazing, I think, doorway that set up the sort of the trajectory really of the rest, I think, of my academic and certainly then my entry into the professional world. And at the same time, as it was great to go to these amazing schools, it also was a point at which worlds collided, right? Because the world that I came from, which was a fairly modest upbringing, colliding with this world of such privilege, in terms of the people that I was sort of rubbing shoulders, the other kids, the rich kids, quote unquote. As a grown up now, you obviously learn and understand that, people have worked hard to be able to get those opportunities for their children. But at the time, looking back, I realized that there was a bit of overwhelm at some point around making that transition each time. And I don't mean to say that we were coming from abject poverty. It was nothing like that. It was a good life, and it was I'd say a modest life, but I never lacked for anything, and when I talk about the resilience and determination of my mom to really be there for me, in these schools, as an example, when you're doing sports, the school always has its own sports kit, right? It's got its own sports staff and whatever. But you never want to be that kid who's using the school's, equipment. You want to have your own. You want to have your. So I like to play cricket when I was still small. So you want to have your own cricket bat and your own cricket pads and your own gloves and whatever. My mom always made sure, somewhere somehow that she found the way to make sure that I had my own equipment so I could fit in, as it were. So I really grew up, I think, with that support, and but it was also, I think, that question around these two worlds that I was having to straddle and navigate as I grew up. So I think that would be some of how I would describe my how I grew up, at least in terms of my early childhood and my school days.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for shedding that light, because it does really give a bit of perspective as to, how things would later on turn out. But, I can resonate with what you're actually saying there, because I would hear, when back in the time when we would be there, on a parents' day or sports day, some kids would literally be looking up to see if their parents are jetting in with a private jet or with a chopper, and it was that sort of scenario where it was the haves that would go to schools like that. And I can only imagine what that would have presented for you, in that capacity. But would that then have really put you in a position where it was, because obviously with your back against the wall with that sort of scenario, knowing where you're coming from and knowing what is possible and available, that you then really took your studies seriously and became studious?
Yeah, I don't think it really had a sway in that way. I had to work hard in school. I don't want to minimize that, but I was one of those who was just naturally gifted academically, right? I learned things and I understood them immediately. My mom tells the story of, they bought me a dictionary when I think I was in grade 5 or 6. No, maybe before that, maybe grade, a children's dictionary at the time. And I think a couple of weeks after they bought the dictionary, I went and I said to my parents, yeah, I need a new dictionary. And they said, we just bought you a dictionary a couple of weeks ago. And then my answer was, I finished it, Um, so I that was just how I was, my natural curious mind. I think that curiosity certainly has stayed with me even now, up until now. And it's I think definitely part of what has informed the bulk of my career, and certainly this journey into the entrepreneurial world and trying to solve problems and change the world in that regard. Yeah, so I think I had a clear sense that I had a obligation to keep my grades up and to work hard. That was never really a challenge for me. I think looking back, what I realized was probably that challenge was um, making sense of who I was and trying to find myself. Um, um, and I think comparing myself and my story and my life to people around me, I think that was some of the conflicts that I had within. Um, Certainly, again, looking back now, those conflicts and unanswered questions become a lot clearer when you look back and say, I've always felt something. I've always felt this. I've always felt that, but you've never been able to quite put your finger on it. So looking back now, I've sort of realized that that experience. I mean, I was exposed to a lot and I saw a lot, and it was an incredible learning journey. Um, um, but yeah, I think hard work was never really a problem for me. I think trying to get to grips with who I was, who Tendai was, that was really the thing I think that was what weighed on me for a long time.
Thank you so much. A lot of people feel a sense of rejection, especially when divorce happens, especially among parents. And then they kind of feel like maybe they are to blame for most of the things that would have happened. And then the onset of whatever parent that is the remainder, you now have that void within you as you grow up, because in your case, you didn't then grow up with a father figure that would have been present as you would have wanted. And, you growing in those sort of environments where playing cricket, you'd need somebody there for you and things of that nature. And maybe that wasn't there. Could you maybe place it there, that where that void was, and in you, maybe then not really having an understanding of who Tendai was at that time?
Yeah, I think it would. I think it probably played some part. Um, But again, on this, I want to really commend my mom, because she made sure that she was there and was present, because what then happened, I mean, I had an early sporting injury in those cricketing days. I think I was grade 3 or so. And it wasn't actually a sporting injury. It was a bone infection that I sort of contracted when I was quite young. And so I ended up being in hospital for quite some time. I think I missed a whole term of school because then there was surgery and then there was this and that and the other thing. And I actually then came out of that uh, experience very unsporty, because I was literally bedridden for almost 3 or 4 months straight, right? And what I then discovered when I came out, so I was not as sporty as I had been. That was sort of the end of when I was very actively sporty and strong in that regard. I found myself one day sitting in front of a piano, and then I just started tinkering notes, and I discovered my love and passion for music at that point. So one door closed in terms of this very sort of more sports oriented version of me, and another opened in this sort of direction of performing arts and drama and music. And I had a natural flair for that as well, and I picked that up. And my mom was just always right behind me, always present whenever there was concerts and Eisteddfods and this and that. So that void, I don't think really had anything to do with dad not being around full time. I think it was more my own internal dialogue, my own internal story, my own internal sense of just looking at my life and comparing. I think it's that comparing thing, where you look at your life, you look at other people's lives and you start to compare and you feel dissatisfaction almost, with your own lot. I'm at a point now, obviously, having journeyed the journey that I've walked and doing a lot of work and self-awareness work and really coming to understand and know myself and accept myself that, my path is my path. I don't need to despise my journey. I don't need to compare my, story and my particular milestones or my, what happens in my life with what's happening in someone else's life. Because I think that whole idea of comparison being the thief of joy, I think that's something that I've experienced very in a very real way. And so now coming to have this point of self-acceptance, accepting my lane, accepting my journey, and being full and whole and okay with that, and that my time will come, has come, is coming, and I don't have to carry the burden of needing to meet a certain expectation based on what is happening in other people's lives. I think one of the things also that I faced, was this, I think, pressure when I was young, because I was always doing so well in school. I grew up being told, Tendai, you're going to be the president of the country, But, I look back, look, there's no patriotic, there's no flags behind me as I speak to you. I'm not His Excellency. I'm just Tendai, the guy, And sometimes I look back and say, people obviously who say that mean well. They're trying to encourage and affirm you, and motivate you. But I think subconsciously there was a pressure that came that I had to always be on my A game. I had to always be this excellent version of myself all the time. And I think that pressure, it takes away in some ways from being just showing up and being real and being vulnerable and saying, yo, guys, today I'm tired, whatever, I spoke to someone earlier this year and I was saying, sometimes I wished that I could just be in the middle, I could hide in the middle of the pack, our classrooms were, 20, 22 kids. Sometimes I was like, why do I always have to be number one? It might have been better just to be number 10, 11, there, somewhere in the middle. Just, then there's no pressure, because and I understand it now, even in my journey as an entrepreneur, me and my co-founder walking this journey, me having to lead and build something. I understand it now with the work that I'm doing in leadership development, and also this men's mental health advocacy that I'm now sort of stepping into, that really, it's sometimes very lonely at the top, and that loneliness doesn't always come because of external factors. I think that what you've called a void is something that I carried for some time, for various reasons. I think maybe my father's not being fully available and present, maybe that had something to do with it. I know certainly that there were moments when you wish just to hear your dad say, I'm proud of you, well done, that kind of thing. So I think that definitely would be a part of it. But I think there were some other, I think, deeper factors as well.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us there, because it just really does give a bit of closure to this. And you did mention that it's lonely at the top. Please do not jump from that top balcony that you're on right now, because I don't think this time there'll be a softer.
No, tonight, no more jumping from balconies. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, you know what they say about entrepreneurship. You jump and then the parachute will appear. So you might have been onto something. But before we jump into your entrepreneurial stint, you then went on and spent 17 years in corporate finance. Could you just maybe give us an overview of what that was like and sort of the learnings that you brought back from that time and mission, because that's a long time, 17 years.
Yeah, I think I've still had work in the space now and then. So it would be, I think, approaching maybe approaching 20 years to be fair. And even now I still do some advisory work in the space here and there. But I think the corporate journey for me, I trained in Zimbabwe. So I found myself entering the corporate and sort of financial accounting world through PwC. My results. I'd been a scientist in school, and I'd hoped to go and study science, but at the time, again, the bursary scheme that I was on was only up until the end of secondary school, and they couldn't go beyond that, because their philosophy is, look, we have to give other kids a chance as well, so I had to sort of try and figure it out again, watching my peers jet off to international tertiary education, and I was now sort of stuck and trying to figure out, there weren't some of the opportunities that exist these days for different finance options, to study abroad at the time, but you either had it or you didn't, so yeah, at the time, then I took my 19 points from A level, and then they found them my CV came across the financial director at PwC at the time, and she brought me in to do articles on the top program. And so I did my articles with PwC and Zim. Then in 2008, I moved to Durban. I lived in Durban, working in the freight and logistics space, again in finance. In 2012, I moved to Shanghai. I lived in Shanghai for a couple of years. I did my MBA there, and then worked there, sort of freelance for a year thereafter. Came back, lived and worked in Mozambique, and so it took me into many different places. And then in 2016, I met my wife in Paul, and she dragged me from the east coast of Mozambique, and I joined her in Joburg. Worked a bit of a stint here, and then that's how we got to the point where my old schoolmate, friend and business partner Oliver, that's when we sort of reconnected. I think after almost 20 years, we were at Peterhouse together, and he had taken more of an academic track in microbiology, plant pathology, to the doctorate in the UK, and we reconnected. And I think that was where the Kuronga journey then also was birthed. But yeah, that was essentially my entry into the corporate and financial track, and how that journey sort of evolved.
Absolutely. And obviously, there's always a lot of stories about how did you meet and things of that nature. And I'm glad there was a bit of dragging happening there. And I'm hoping there wasn't an episode of you having been dragged off of a balcony, because I'm checking your track record. Now, with Kuronga, you've made significant strides with it using artificial intelligence for farming. And I viscerally remember Zimbabwe being the breadbasket of the southern part of Africa, where even our oranges were being exported, places, Mazoe, all those things, and just the maize and everything else. But all of that came to a screeching halt, and obviously there's different times that would have happened. Now, could you share how this technology is transforming the lives of small-scale farmers in Africa?
Sure. So when Oliver Windrum is my business partner, and again, as a friend from school, we used to be in the jazz band together. We had a lot of similar interests back then, and when we reconnected, I think we realized, I think, a shared, passion for the plight of small farmers in Africa, and how technology could be used to underpin lifting their upliftment and empowerment, right? And he grew up very much in a sort of a farming sort of background. I think his father was one of the largest tomato farmers in Zim at the time. And so he grew up seeing a lot of different farming realities, farming models, what worked, what didn't. He grew up with that understanding. And so we brought that backdrop and sort of combined it with my more commercial journey to try and bring those skills together to help to bring something which could really make an impact. And so we thought initially, the plight of small farmers in Africa is wide, and the problems are many and varied. You can talk about lack of access to credit, you can talk about lack of access to technical assistance, to information, lack of access to inputs, lack of access to markets. There's so many different pieces to solve, you know, and I think what we then realized was, okay, I think we can try and approach it from a market access starting point, because at least when you look at market access, you are meeting farmers where they are. They've, you know, generally have produced something and they are now trying to find markets. And within the market space, market access thought process, we figured that maybe logistics, last mile logistics, as in getting product to the actual market, was the issue. So I'm based in Johannesburg. So we were sort of working and building and starting to form and create networks in and around the greater Johannesburg, greater Gauteng sort of area, right? And so we built our initial tool was an Uber-like scheduled hailing solution. So Prosper and Tendai are farming tomatoes in the same area. We're going to do our harvest next week. We say, okay, fine, let's harvest on Wednesday. We schedule transport for Wednesday. One of the transporters on the network will accept the job, just like an Uber, right? Then he comes and he picks up all our produce on the same day. We label it and whatever. We find a way to make sure that it's properly traced and labeled, and so that Prosper's and Tendai's product don't mix. And then he takes it to market and we share the cost to market, basically. So we reduce the cost to market. That was our initial thought process, that this is a great big idea. We tested it and we put it in the hands of farmers. And so the farmers were like, look, this is cute, but this is not our problem, right? Farmers are making a plan. They would rent a friend's truck. They will carry the product on their back if they have to go to market. What was happening was we realized they were suffering a high rate of rejection due to quality mismatch. And we realized the issue is not logistics, the issue is quality. And so that's how we made this pivot, and gathered this insight and understanding that quality is the challenger, not necessarily competency or logistics or ability to actually get the product to market. And as we then later realized, also access to quality information, you know, which is then something we've also then now started to incorporate in terms of digital training resources. That's something we are now pivoted into. But that understanding that quality was the issue, we figured that this was a problem that AI could solve, you know, through machine vision and being able to get farmers essentially to take photographs of their produce when it's harvested and then graded. Because I think one of our keystone insights in this journey was that there's actually buyers for every grade of produce, right? People only think that you can only sell a perfectly round red tomato, but that only is for like Woolworths, or, you know, in America it would be Trader Joe's or whatever's the premium retailer for fresh produce. But as long as food is safely and nutritiously grown, you know, you look at feeding schemes, you look at prisons, you look at food processors, you know, who make ketchup. They don't care what the tomato looks like because they're going to crush it and smash it anyway. So but as long as it's safely and nutritiously grown, and the farmer's ability to be able to grade well on the farm. So big farming, commercial farming outfits, they've got pack houses, they throw resources at this grading issue, and they've got people who actually perform this grading so that they can sell their produce in the right market. Small farmers don't always have that. And so what happens is they mix the good and the bad together. At the market, the buyer will either reject it outright because it's not well graded, or he will give them a low price because he then has to go and do the work of sifting and separating the good and the bad, right? Or in the worst case, farmers are self-rejecting on the farm so that they are discarding perfectly good produce, which might not be for the top market, but maybe the second or third tier market would find it acceptable. So this lack of understanding also then results in a secondary problem of food waste, right? So through our solution, what we're trying to then do is, if we can use AI to help farmers to grade their produce well on the farm and then get pointed to the right market corresponding to the quality of their produce, so that the class 1 produce go to the class 1 market, class 2 goes to the class 2 market, etc. They can sell more of what they grow, and also we can reduce food waste. So that's how then the Kuronga thinking and our innovative strategy then evolved, that this was where we wanted to apply our focus.
Absolutely. And that is such a noble idea, because like you said, there's different ranges and different grades to this product. And maybe somebody's an apple farmer and maybe they don't have that big, nice, juicy Granny Smith apple that Woolworths wants to showcase as a price, but that can be still apple juice, or that could be apple cider, or things of that nature. Now, knowledge changes situation. And with that sort of in mind, were there any other sort of learnings that you also maybe come across that your product was solving?
I think, it's still something that it's a technology that was still evolving. I think I have to sort of declare that it's something that we are still building up and working on, so we've had some early success and some early, I think, recognition. We won a couple of global innovation prizes. I think the most significant was the Milk and Motsepe Agritech Prize in 2023, which came with a bit of money that helped us get a little bit along the way. But when you're trying to build and scale a tech startup, you burn through cash quite quickly. And so I think we struggled. Our learning really was that this tiered nature of the marketplace. And also we then started to conduct training workshops to help farmers understand, because farmers were like, okay, fine, it's all good to help us with quality at the end of our production cycle. But we also then had this question around, how do we think about in building quality right from the beginning, right? So from the genetics of the inputs, getting resilient genetics. So whatever the crop is, something that's maybe drought or climate resistant, all these things, how to help farmers prepare their seed beds properly, how to set up their irrigation well, when to spray what is the right, what is not right. So that quality, because all of these things impact quality, right? How you follow and how disciplined and diligent you are with following good agricultural practices in your production process, it all impacts quality. And so we then started to think, okay, how can we help farmers understand quality right from the inception of the production process throughout the journey, and also, use a system where they can self-report, almost self-certify as they go along that they are following the right procedures, and allowing us also to gather that data and to be able to have early detection of any problems and step in and intervene, rather than only realize at the end that the quality has been compromised because of something that could have been avoided had it been detected in time. So we moved also then into this world of access to information. So these workshops we conducted, we sort of recorded and digitized them, and we're putting together, I think, some resources that we'll then make available. Because we then realized that access to information is another critical area where farmers can derive value.
Absolutely, and congratulations on that award. It was one of those striking things along your journey, the Milk and Motsepe Prize. But as we all know, when you start a business, you can imagine you coming headstrong or head on with people that have always done things the way they've always done it, and you're trying to come in and say, hey guys, it could be better. And people will always be doing what they think is right, even though it's not giving them the best sort of outcome. How did this journey impact you as a person?
Yeah, I think as you say, the world of agri is very grassroots, and especially with small farmers, trust is currency. A lot of people are always trying to sell farmers things, even when they don't have the money. We say we want to try and put money into farmers' hands first before we try and sell them anything, and that's the approach that we were always taking. But I think trying to get farmers into this digital kind of thinking around something which is so grassroots, which is getting your hands dirty, and also getting buyers to come on board where there's no demonstrated traction. I think that was a bit of a challenge that we faced, and we then realized, okay, maybe we need to focus on getting the product, getting the technology to work well. And so that's where we've then shifted our focus. We can make digital training resources available, but I think getting good technology working will then be a compelling value proposition, which we can provide not only to small farmers, but even into more advanced, pack houses. They can apply the same technology. So that's where we sort of had a learning there. And I think as you point out, the ups and downs of entrepreneurship, the vagaries, the lack of consistency. I mean, my wife, I have to again commend her because she has been such a big rock and support. She came along this journey fully invested. I mean, we sold our apartment in Sandton. We bought a farm in the Val, about an hour south of Joburg. So we were actually farming for a couple of years. Again, learning the space hands on, so that whatever we are doing and building and trying to present to farmers was something that was informed by a real world understanding, so that I could go to farmers and speak to them as a farmer and say, yo, guys, those market access challenges, I'm also facing them. I'm also facing the reality. And so that helped, I think, to gain the trust and build credibility of myself and Oliver and Kuronga as a brand, that we are really all about putting the farmer first. And I think, again, you come to a point where, because of the inconsistency in terms of getting follow-on funding or getting traction with the innovation, bread and butter issues then come to the fore. When we had started the journey, it was just Mpo and I. 3-4 years later, and 2 daughters later, it's questions about, okay, how do we achieve a sustainable situation, given the way that our lives are changing? We have to put food on the table. And so that was then the point at which, I guess, you had to have that tough conversation, and then you have to have your own come to Jesus moment. And that was when that post then came around, where I was like, it's all well and good to want to change the world, but I'm, a husband and a father first, and that's my first obligation. Opportunities for innovation and to have that impact will always come, but the family comes first, and that particular role is my primary role. And so that was the point that brought me to that moment of, I think, vulnerability and sharing, and just saying, okay, this is what I've tried. It hasn't quite worked, guys. I need help. And so that then spurred that particular journey, and then the I guess the altered course that then arose as a result.
Now, I must commend you. When I saw that post, it shook me to my core, because I could see your girls, I could see the journey, I could see where you've been, and that whole journey really wrote the same way my journey wrote. And I was like, would I ever be able to be the person that's writing this post? Now, I want you to walk us through how you got the strength to put that post together. What was going on?
Yeah, I think, a lot of all of the factors, I think, that we've discussed, in terms of questioning yourself, doubting yourself, showing up as your best self. I think sometimes I definitely had gotten into some patterns of behavior and that were self-destructive, but also destructive to my family, to my marriage, frankly, and to, it was a point where you had to, cut the BS basically and get real, about how you want to show up, how I wanted to show up as a man. So that was sort of where that came from. And I mean, it really caught fire. Like you said, I never expected that kind of, I think, resonance. I think what I then understood, from that, I mean, I think LinkedIn measures virality as any post that has 100,000 impressions. I think as you and I sit right now, it's I think starting to close in on 500,000 impressions. I mean, it went really around the world. I had people from the Philippines, I had people from Jamaica, I had people from all over, really reaching out and saying, we see you, and the courage and bravery and the vulnerability that you've shown is something that resonated with a lot of people. And so, I realized in that moment that a couple of things. That was, I think, a big turning point for me in terms of thinking about the work that I'm doing, what I should be doing, purpose, and how to, I think, how I want to be. And I think one of the sort of two things that were really big takeaways. One of them was that a lot of people are suffering silently, So, on the back of that, a lot of people were like, okay, send us your CV, send us your resume, we'll have a look and see if we can help, whatever. And then I did. And then on the back of some of those responses, other people would be like, can I send mine as well? Like me too. It was like other people, I really saw that, okay, because I've shared this, other people now also have permission, almost to come forward with their realities. So that vulnerability aspect, I think, was something that really hit home for a lot of people. And then the second thing was also just the humanity of people, right? That even if people couldn't help me immediately, like with a job or with an opportunity, just to be able to come and comment and say, we see you, and it's going to be okay. Just that, to share that support, that humanity, that was another big thing I saw. And so I saw vulnerability and humanity in that moment at work in an amazing way. And it got me thinking as to, okay, I think there might be something here in terms of carrying this message of vulnerability and humanity as superpowers that can connect us, rather than, to see them as weaknesses as they're often portrayed, that to be vulnerable is to be weak. No, actually, it's a higher form of strength that and how we can show up and engage with each other, and then that took me then. I mean, I've read a lot of work of, Dr. Brene Brown and the like, and her work around vulnerability and shame and that and working through all of that, and that amongst many other, sort of tools that I then got very, I think, curious about. They moved me into this place of, okay, I think if we can take this message into the world of leadership development, and try and get leaders to start to think about more human-centered approach to leadership, there is a way in which this story can not only resonate and help people, but also, I think, improve, the way we show up in society, and improve the quality of leadership, and change the world in that way. Better leaders make better people, right? Better husbands, better spouses, better friends, better, so I think for me, certainly, to be vulnerable and to be humanity, and to embrace these qualities, and to search myself, and to come out in my truest, most authentic self, has been, I think, something which has completely shifted how I am, how I see myself. I've learned now to accept myself and to love myself, and I show up differently, even with my spouse and with my family, and so even it took me, I think, into a journey where you have to completely unmask, and get real, and it's been an incredible journey from that point. I mean, I did manage to get some work from that post, that sort of kept me going, but I think there's been a broader and more, I think, significant shift and pivot into this world of leadership development, and I think a particular focus, just based on my own journey, into on men's mental health advocacy, and then I think helping men also to embrace the same narrative, that vulnerability and humanity, getting to the core of who you are, and learning a different kind of masculinity, I guess. So this story, and I guess the message that is now very strong on my heart, is now something I'm wanting to apply in the area of leadership development, and I think men's mental health advocates. So that's how that journey sort of has culminated, I think, as a result of that post.
Absolutely. Well, you're here now. I mean, one thing that I always tell people is, whenever life or things are happening to you, pay attention to what's happening, because one day you'll have a good story to tell. And you obviously have one that you're sharing with us here on the Online Prosperity Show. And I think you used the right words. One of them was mask and permission. And I'm going to start with mask. So many people are just showing up in what they think the world wants them to show up as, whereas behind the scenes, it's what people get to see is just a facade, and behind the scenes there's not much going on, and it's just like a whole hollow Easter egg, where the whole big chocolate is there, but you dip inside, it's just an empty shell. And with the other thing is the permission, because Now, having seen what you did, so many people would then be courageous enough to then show up and say, you know what, this definitely hasn't been working for a while, so why should I keep pretending? Now, I don't know if that was one of your initiatives, the holding space project, which has now become one of the things that you're also working on. Could you maybe elaborate on what it is that you do there and the impact that it's now having for others?
Yeah, so the Holding Space project is not my own initiative. It's the brainchild, I think, of some really phenomenal men, Marvin Canham, Kevin Rudham, and Damian Holt. I think they've put together a platform that essentially creates safe spaces for men to work. They hold what they call holding space circles, where men gather to connect. I think to release, to be vulnerable, a safe space for men to be vulnerable, to share, and I think to unlearn some of the toxic kind of masculinity and narratives that we've grown up with, and learn a new and healthier form of masculinity. They also have classes and facilitation courses around the same sort of subject matter, and planning to sort of start to do retreats where men can sort of go and again engage with their deeper selves, and I think have that connection. And so I came across their work again because now I started telling my story and sharing more about it, and I connected with them, and then they've essentially brought me on board to also join the fight, I guess. And it's something that I've taken very strong ownership of, because I think in this Boys Don't Cry dispensation that we try, and the way we're raising boys, and then also the paradox that it's a man's world. What you have is broken boys who become broken men who become leaders of society. And it's you just need to look at the world around us today, right? To see what happens when broken men get into power, and when broken men are leading our society, our communities, our civic organizations, our businesses, our families, right? Being led by broken men. And so I've found that this work, even with the work that I do in terms of leadership development, men's mental health advocacy still, I think, takes center stage for me, because it's, I think, important work. And at the moment, as we're trying to build and amplify the story, we really believe that if we can get allies who can work with us and support us, through anything from partnerships to platforms to financial resources, really to help us to keep doing the work. That, I think, is something which will, when we talk about changing society and being the change, this is where I think we really believe that there's strong opportunity. I mean, just in South Africa alone, Discovery recently released some suicide statistics that are really skyrocketing. And I think the South African Psychiatrist, I think, Council also has indicated that, the Discovery report showed that suicide is now the leading cause of unnatural deaths, more than road accidents and even crime, right? So there's a mental health story there, right? You look in South Africa in particular, men make up 80% of suicides, despite only being 50% of the population. And so you see that there's a need to look at amplifying the advocacy around men's mental health, and there's a business case beyond it. I made a post the other day, and I was talking about organizations put so much money into golf days and spa days and massage and wellness days, and it's like, the people who are coming to those days are broken. We need to go deeper when we are trying to ask the question of, what does wellness really mean? What does it look like? And so, yeah, so that's I think where a lot of my passion then and purpose really, I think, has come to the fore, in terms of how, again, another way in which my own story can be brought to help and uplift others.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, this has been a journey, and this has been, your journey and your story. And I really appreciate you having shared this with us today. Now, if somebody's watching this and is feeling, the need to maybe get in touch, first of all, what is it that you would want people to reach out to you for? Would it be about Kuronga, or would it be about the mental health stuff, or would it be about being a dad?
Yeah. So, I mean, I wear many hats, right? And I never miss the opportunity to share what I do, because I think different parts of my journey will resonate with different people. We are looking for follow-on funding as Kuronga. I think we believe that we have got a thought and a vision that really can uplift and change the lives of farmers, and that AI has a strong role to play in that. We can see the move that's happening in the AI space. In my work in leadership development, I am involved in bringing, I think, long-term leadership journeys through an organization called Inspired Leadership that I've just joined. And so that is also something that I think lends itself to transforming the workplace, and building leaders, and I think general society. But I think definitely I think one of the strongest calls is around this issue of men's mental health advocacy, because healed men, I think, heal society. And so the Holding Space project is a very, very something that's very close to my heart. And if there's anybody who is involved in this work or interested in partnering in this, in helping to advance this work, again, either through partnerships, through platforms such as this one that you provided for us so generously, and I'm thankful, and through any kind of sponsorships or putting financial resources behind the work we're doing. They can reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, the way where you find me, Tendai Chitapi. They can find the Holding Space Project on Instagram. They can also find me there on Instagram. And my email address is Tendai@Coach4Humanity. That's Tendai@Coach, the number 4, humanity, one word, .com. And hopefully, we can find some allies in this work, and help to really move it forward, and move the needle on this very important piece of work.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that. I will make sure that all those links are in the show notes, so that people can obviously reach out in whichever way that they feel compelled to reach out to you for. Now, Tendai, this has been a journey. I mean, your life story and your experience have so much to give to those that are, looking for health, wealth, and relationships. And along the journey, you mentioned 2 remarkable women. I'm going to give you this time and space to pick either one or both. The first one was your mom, and the second one is Paul. If you can just maybe give us a few parting words, either all at the same time or one each, what would you say to them?
I think one of the toxic narratives that we grow up with is that men have got it all together, and that you've got to always be the strong one, and that you've always got to have a solution, always just have it together. And for me, growing up, I look back and I realize that it is the women around me that have held me up at the lowest times, and even when at the worst, in the worst versions of myself. It is the women around me that have held me up and given me strength and kept me going. So, growing up, it was my mom, held me up, supported me, was there for me in a way no one else was. And I will forever be grateful to her for that. I'm thankful that she is still with us, and that I can, as I journey on, really have the opportunity to give back to her, because she's given me everything. Um, and then my wife, who is just so phenomenal, my long-suffering wife, Mpho, who I love dearly and who has been my rock in so many ways and has been in my corner, when she believes in me and supports me, she has given everything, to be there and to be in my corner and again hold me up and lift me up. And so I owe her my life in many ways, and I want to thank her. She's given me two beautiful daughters, Anokosha and Alita, and who I love. And so, yeah, the women in my life have really helped me and shaped me to, I think, be a man that can show up and make a difference for them, but also, I think, in this world, But like I said earlier, it's all well and good to want to change the world, but my primary priority is and will forever be to be a good husband and a loving husband to my wife, and a present father to my daughters, and a grateful son to my mom.
Thank you, man. You have no idea what your words, even for those that are just watching right now, you're just uplifting people and you're literally giving people back to themselves. And for that, I thank you.
Thank you, Prosper.
Cool stuff. Now, you brought us into your world, luggage and everything. What's next? What should we expect? And what are you bringing us to? What are we looking forward to in the future?
Yeah, well, I think we're flying high. I think now we've got wings. So now I think we can actually fly, not with our imagination as we once thought as children. I think I am very excited for the road ahead. I think in these areas of my passion that I deeply care about, the innovation to move society forward, developing new leaders for this world, and developing and creating safe spaces for men. I think this work in isolation is important, but combined, I think there's a very powerful interconnectivity and what's the word that they use these days? Intersectionality, right, around the kind of impact that I believe my work and my role and my purpose are going to bring to the world. So I'm very excited for the work ahead, and I'm thrilled every time that we've connected in this way, and I'm excited to be living in a time when your voice, your story can find a resonance, can find an ear, an eye, can find interest, can find resonance with someone so far away from you. It's an exciting time for our humanity, I think, to evolve and thrive. And I'm putting my hand up to lead the writing of this next chapter of our society and our humanity.
Right, whatever support you want. I'm sorry we didn't have the budget to send you a chopper so we could actually have a whiskey together or something of that nature, but you get what I mean.
I'm sure our paths will cross.
I can't thank you enough for joining us on this enlightening journey. Your life story is just a testament to the power of embracing one's true self and just the profound impact it can have on the world. Thank you for trusting the process.
Thank you, Prosper. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. For those that are watching right now, if today's conversation resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Please share this episode with somebody who's going through stuff, or might be going through a career change, might be going through relationship ups and downs, or just is not in the best place at the moment. Because with the initiatives that Tendai and Co are looking at, we could really, really help so many people, come back to basis and not jump like what Tendai did at the beginning of the story here. I really, really can't thank Tendai enough for sharing his journey and also for going through this journey, because I think this is the somewhat rite of passage that so many of us need in order for us to be, do, and have a happier existence. So I will be putting all the links in the show notes so that you can obviously check out what Tendai has been up to, and you can visit Kuronga's website to learn more about their innovative work in agri-tech. And for those that are interested in supporting men's health, also explore the Holding Space project and consider how you can contribute to creating safe spaces and healing for growth, because these people actually have the keys to Africa's future and the world's future if you really look at it. I can't wait to see what you're going to do with this information. Bye for now.